Hello, everyone, and here we have a new story. Before we get to that, I want to ask you to subscribe, like, and be sure to write comments in order to participate in the development of the community. Write how to improve my community, current topics and the stories you are interested in, and much more. I read and listen to all the comments. People write me stories by mail from different countries. There are problems with translation. I apologize for this. I will work on it and try to fix these errors. I want to thank everyone for their support and the people who wrote to me by mail, broadcast news stories. New videos on my channel are published once every 2 days at 7 p.m. Don't forget to put a bell in order not to miss new videos. And now let's go. Hello, I want to tell you my story. I'm interested in the opinion of men in this community. My heart is very sad. Although I have already made some conclusions. In general, let's get started. I met my wife when I was just entering the institute. I proposed to her when I was a sophomore. My wife was a slender and beautiful girl. She entered the correspondence department later than me. As a result, we moved to another city and lived together soul to soul. We've been through fire and water together. After a while, my wife left for the last exam. She lived in a dorm. The dormitory was of a new block type. My wife lived in a room with 3 girls. My wife's classmate was placed next to them in one of the rooms. Eventually, my wife had sex with him. By the way, I found out about it by accident. I came to her to help and lived there for 5 days. We had a party. We drank a lot of alcohol, and I asked the guys how my wife was doing. What did she do here in her spare time? One of the guys said he noticed my wife with Jack, her classmate. I was furious. I've been trying to find Jack for a very long time to explain to him that you can't sleep with other people's wives. We had a conflict with my wife. During the conflict, I hit my wife in the face. I took a knife and walked around the dorm. It was a rash act, but Jack was hiding from me. Student Arthur calmed me down. He invited me to his room, and we had a heart-to-heart conversation. Arthur told me about his life and his ex-wife. He said a good phrase. I will now quote it to you. The bitch won't want it. The man won't jump up. Arthur asked if you would have sex if the girl didn't mind. I thought about it, and my anger at Jack disappeared. But other torments began. I went to my wife to talk face to face. How could you do this to me? I told my wife. I loved you so much and trusted you. My wife defended herself as best she could. My wife said she went to him to give him a sketchbook. He invited her to have tea and talk. The wife agreed, and he turned off the light and began to molest her. In general, my wife turned out to be an innocent lamb. Jack was in the role of an experienced male. As a result, rage took over my mind again. I found Jack and made him tell me everything as it was. He resisted for a long time and didn't want to tell me anything. I had to push him a little. Everything was so banal that I just couldn't believe it. Friends of my wife who lived in the same room with her. They asked Jack to entertain my wife. He agreed and came to their room. After Jack entered the room, he flirted with my wife and kissed her. In the end, Jack suggested that my wife go to his room. My wife immediately agreed. As a result, they had sex until morning with breaks, of course. But they tried all the poses from the Kama Sutra. I was shocked. There was only one thought in my head. Did my wife behave like the last whore? It just can't be. As it turned out, anything is possible. The fact of my wife's infidelity faded into the background. I was wondering what to do with my wife. We had a painful showdown. We shouted a lot. It was like a volcano erupting inside of me. In the end, we stayed together. Most likely, this is a big mistake. It seems to me that then it was necessary to put an end to this. 2 years have passed. It was very difficult for me to forget this betrayal, especially when my wife and I had sex. I watched my wife moan and roll her eyes. At that moment, I had pictures in my head of my wife having sex with Jack. But gradually, I began to move away from this situation. My wife worked at a large enterprise. My wife was offered a position as an engineer. My wife had a boss who was 9 years younger than her. It was assumed that the trade union committee would be located in their office on this floor. In general, they were all friends with each other. I didn't notice anything wrong. They always celebrated employee birthdays together. One day, they were celebrating the birthday of one of the employees. First, they celebrated at work, then continued at the bar. I started making good money and bought a house and a car. My daughter is graduating from college. One day my wife decided to dye her hair and become a blonde. My wife has become even more beautiful. At work, she often visited the directorate. As a result, my wife began to travel frequently on business trips. She often went on business trips with her boss. A new date is approaching. My wife is 45 years old. Again, a 45-year-old Barry woman. I needed an empty flash drive. I asked my wife and she lent me a USB stick. I inserted a USB into my laptop. The flash drive was not empty. There were photos from my wife's work. I became interested and I started reviewing all the photos. In the photo, there were restaurants, recreation centers, grilled meat in nature, and so on. In general, all the places where my wife went with all the employees. To be honest, I didn't know anything about a lot of things. So I asked my wife directly, why is she hiding this from me? My wife started lying to me and coming up with excuses. Then I thought about it and started to figure it out. There was no direct evidence, only indirect. At that moment, I remembered a Bulgarian friend who told me about his life. That's what he told me. If the wife feels someone else's balls under her ass, then she will constantly want to feel it again. I read on the internet that there are girls who don't cheat, but there are no girls who cheat once. The infidelities will be systematic, only the girls will be encrypted even more seriously. My house is clean and cozy. The relationship between us has become gold. I decided to talk to my daughter. She is already an adult. Dad, no one is cheating on you. Mom is always at home. My daughter answered me. My wife and I don't have sex at all anymore. She constantly says that she is tired or already asleep. But preparing for work takes a very long time and she dresses provocatively and does beautiful makeup. I was sure she was cheating on me again. My intuition couldn't let me down. I tried to talk to my wife again. My wife reacted aggressively and called me paranoid. I started going through the photos from her parties carefully again. My wife is acting windy. She then hugs one man, then sits on the other's lap in a group photo. I tell my wife that you're a solid girl. What are you doing? She replied that it was all done as a joke. This photo was hanging on the wall in the trade union committee at my wife's work. There doesn't seem to be any hard evidence, but there is an emptiness in my soul. As my wife says, she's just a funny girl, that's all. They're just friends with the whole team, but I felt that she was hiding something from me. You should work in the police. You like to arrange interrogations, my wife said. You're paranoid, and so on. I watched a lot of stories on this channel and was already familiar with all this. I had a feeling that all girls are the same. They all say the same thing. I know two types of men. Some say that all girls cheat. Men of the second type say this until they pat their wife's lover's ass with their palm. They will not believe in their wife's infidelity in any way. But are those people who suspect and have circumstantial evidence paranoid? Anyway, one day my wife threw a corporate party for 3 days. She left on the condition that she would call me. As a result, not a single call was received from her side. She didn't answer my calls. In general, I couldn't stand it. Packed my things and went to my parents. I filed for divorce. My wife calls me every day and says I'm a jealous fool, that I was making a huge mistake and she was apologizing. My wife wants me to come home. I've already made a decision that it is uncomfortable for me to live with such a girl. I'm not coming back and I'm going to build a new life. I keep in touch with my daughter. After the divorce, my wife won't leave me alone. My wife wants to meet me and makes me look paranoid. She says it's not her fault. And what do you think? Friends? Write your comment. Did I make the right choice or not? I will definitely read all your comments. Now let's move on to the advice of the author of the channel. The opinion of the author of the channel. By tradition, I want to wish strength and patience to the hero of this story. When I read this story, I was shocked. What a hell the hero lived in. I think you did the right thing and in no case should you return this relationship. A good relationship between a girl and a man should be transparent. But when the relationship is vague, that is, a person lives in suspicion all the time. This has to stop, especially if your wife has already cheated on you once. That guy from Bulgaria said it right. When a girl touches someone's balls at least once in her life, she will do it again and again. you can see help from a psychotherapist. I think he will help you through the most difficult time. Hold on and remember that parting is not the end. This is a stage for something new. Think of it as a chance to start a new life. Take into account your mistakes and do not allow them in the future. If you've watched to the end, I want to say thank you very much. I love you all. Thank you for joining me on this exciting journey of love, betrayal, and redemption. I appreciate your support and encourage you to subscribe, like, and share this story. Your participation and feedback are invaluable for shaping our content and promoting mutual understanding and community growth. Until we meet again.